This show is presented by the 323 Network. You can watch all your favorite 323 friends and shows on the 323 Network YouTube channel, follow us on all social media platforms at 323Reid, and support us as we continue to grow at patreon.com/323Reid. That's 323REID. The Super Bowl is here, and it's time to get hyped.
Oh, Joe, that ain't good enough. Come on, Joe. Thank you, baby. Thank you. You making blood come from my damn mouth. That's what I'm talking about, baby. You gotta make blood come to the mouth. You can't just smack me and don't hit me hard. That's bullshit. When you hit a motherfucker, you hit that motherfucker. Let's kick their ass, motherfucker. Kick their ass. Let's go. Yeah!
But do you need a little help translating the universal language known as football?
Pie de Cody Parking. 43 yardas. El snap. Le mete el pie. Distancia, dirección. Le dio el poste. ¡No! ¡Falló! ¡Oh! ¡No, señor! ¡No, señor! ¡No, señor! ¡No, señor! ¡No, señor! ¡No, señor! ¡Los Eagles se van con la victoria! ¡Ay, papá! ¡No, señor! ¡No, señor! ¡Chicago! ¡Chicago!
A game that'll make you go from this.
We're going to kick you in the teeth, all right? And when you punch us back, we're going to smile at you. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up. And then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down, all right? And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up. And then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
To this.
When you see your players give all that they have and you lose that way, it's tough. You know, you don't want that for them. So, but we'll be better for it, you know.
Well, forget analysts like Michael Irvin.
Oh my God, this is what's wrong with today. The young ladies today, they're not learning from mom how to cook. We're losing recipes, and now we're going to lose Peyton Manning's knowledge.
Or the Manning brothers.
Let's go to Peyton. He's going to break down that touchdown. Can't hear shit. Never mind.
When you can have analysis like this. That's where go argue with Dylan on the YouTube chats. It's shit week, everybody.
Oh, the flag that came up for Dylan.
Yeah. Look, that's what Dylan does. That's all Dylan deserves.
We might actually know where they play.
And the Kelseys. I'm tired of Jason and Travis Kelce blowing up my damn TikTok feed.
I would rather have Zach Wilson.
Oh, Zach got him.
Well, perfect timing.
Was like, shut up.
How to at the 323.
Shit.
So,
I need something to fidget with.
Only on the 323. I'm your host, Reid Murphy.
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Look at the show. I'm the captain.
Welcome to the fucking show.
Fuck Scott. Ladies, gentlemen, football fanatics, and enthusiasts alike, welcome to the most electrifying event in professional football, the 2024 NFL Draft. As the anticipation reaches a fever pitch, we gather here today to witness the birth of new dreams, the forging of new destinies, and the beginning of a new era in the National Football League. With each selection, the course of history will be altered, franchises will be transformed, and young athletes will embark on a journey that will define their careers. From the war rooms of all 32 NFL teams to the living rooms of prospects across the nation, the excitement is palpable as we prepare to unveil the future stars of the gridiron. As dreams collide with reality, as hopes soar to new heights, let us embrace the thrill of the unknown and celebrate the timeless tradition of the NFL Draft. Strap in, football fans, for a spectacle like no other awaits us tonight. Welcome to the 2024 NFL Draft. The Chicago Bears are now on the clock. That's right, Reid. Oh my gosh, welcome football fans. This is your host, Scott Ellia of College Shame Day, and it is Super Week here at the 323. And when Reid and I were sitting down and trying to figure out what kind of contribution can College Shame Day bring to the table, and to be honest, it is never too early to do one of these mock drafts now that the draft order is all but set except for the last two picks, as we see the Chiefs and the 49ers facing off in the next week or so. Everything's pretty much already set in stone. And I couldn't imagine going through a way too early mock draft without the Ebony to my Ivory, the Todd McShay to my Mel Kiper Jr., Reid, Big Daddy Murphy. How you doing, Reid?
I'm doing great. Happy Black History Month, Scott. It is great to see you. It's great to have some Shame Day on Super Week. This is going to be a time. I'm excited for the draft.
Oh, it is going to be a time. And I am just going to preface this from all the haters because I already have enough fan bases after me. We got the Swifties and the Kelseys after me. We got the Make-A-Wish kids after me. Who knows what's happening? But for all those listening, take this with a grain of salt, please. I am going after this that if I am the team at so-called pick, this is what I would do at this stage in the process. It is, as of recording, February 2nd. Like Reid said, it's Black History Month. So there's no throwing shade here right now. Of course, a lot of these things are going to probably end up moving in the next 2 months, whether it's pick trades or players moving up the leaderboards or players falling off after they have their pro days. You got senior week going on right now for a lot of these college football players. But Reid, as you heard after the commissioner with that such an eloquent introduction to the NFL draft, the Chicago Bears are on the clock as of right now. You know, looking from the outside in, when you see the Chicago Bears, to me, the three biggest needs, I guess quarterback, if you kind of want to throw it in there, but then also, you know, wide receiver, and then something along the defensive front, maybe an edge rusher. If you were the Bears, what would you do right now with this pick?
I mean, we've taken a dive into this on the main show, and my biggest thoughts have been like, I understand the benefit of trading back and getting that, you know, that capital back.
Oh shit!
I've been played off.
The commissioner's coming out to the podium. What could be happening here with the Bears at number 1?
Oh shit!
There's been a trade. The Chicago Bears have traded the first overall pick to the Las Vegas Raiders for the 13th overall pick, as well as future pick considerations. The Las Vegas Raiders are now on the clock. Wow, could you imagine, Reid? Looks like the Chicago Bears aren't going to try to move on from Justin Fields and Scott's imaginary world, and now the Las Vegas Raiders are sitting there at number 1, primed. Also a quarterback needy team, as well as cornerback there in the secondary or offensive tackle. So let's pivot off the Chicago Bear pick right now. We got a couple more picks to go. Let's refocus to the Raiders. Like I said, quarterback, corner, offensive tackle. Reid, what are you doing here if you're newly hired full-time head coach Antonio Pierce there in Las Vegas?
If I'm the Raiders, and especially being in Las Vegas, you need a star. You need a superstar there. You need somebody that's going to draw the tourists over there. I am taking Caleb Williams at number 1. Go ahead, get that franchise guy. You got his quarterbacks coach and Cliff Kingsbury as your offensive coordinator now. Bring in Caleb. Let's get the star power.
I like it. Well, it looks like the commissioner's come back up to the podium. He's got a card in his hand. Let's see what's going on. With the first pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Caleb Williams, quarterback. Wow, look at that. You know, Reid, are now on the clock. And I had the same thought process as you. You know, what team as big of a stage as Las Vegas? You got newly hired full-time head coach Antonio Pierce. You have the Davis family who like doing these big splash moves. They need a quarterback. We all saw how the Aiden O'Connell kind of kind of experiments going on right now. I mean, you have Caleb Williams, who comes in at 6'1", 218, some really great things. He has great arm talent. He's capable of delivering very accurate passes, especially with short and intermediate throws. He's able to, do that even kind of Patrick Mahomes-esque, without getting his feet actually planted. And, he really maximizes the opportunities for those playmakers downfield by leading them a little bit. But a couple knocks is that, I've found through his tape in college, he puts too much on his own shoulders and responsibilities, and that can kind of force him into those quick pass situations or trying to extend some home run play downfield. And even though he does have those Patrick Mahomes-esque kind of talent where he doesn't have to really plant his foot, that does get him into the point to where he's relying too much on his arm talent, and that could kind of get him into some situational problems down the field. Do you still feel that he is the best quarterback to go off the board? Would you go anyone different, or is Caleb Williams the obvious pick here for the Raiders?
I have been really starting to like what I've been seeing from Drake May in film, but Caleb Williams, just in terms of the pure potential, the ceiling is the highest, right? This is the closest you're going to get to a Patrick Mahomes level player. I think Caleb Williams has to be your number one quarterback right there, just in terms of you can have somebody that can get it out of him.
Right. He definitely seems the most pro-ready, aside from Drake May potentially there at UNC. But yeah, the ceiling's way too high to pass up on him. I know there are some character concerns, but that might be all hearsay from a lot of these haters going around. You saw the same thing going on with Eli Manning when he came out in 2003 saying that he refuses to go to the Chargers. At this point, I know that's been kind of coming out with him, the whole Bear situation, but let's move on. Like you heard, the Washington Commanders are at the number 2 pick. Same kind of situation. They have a really big question mark at quarterback. I'm really impressed with Sam Howell. I hope they give him a really fair shake going forward, especially with the new regime coming in. And also, it's no surprise to anybody listening. I'm very adamant on the Commanders addressing their line issues, both on offense and on defense, whether it's a tackle or the edge. Reid, as the Commanders fan on this recording, do you want to give Howell a little bit more leash and go into this year and try to invest other places, or are you trying to go at quarterback?
If it were anywhere but number 2, yeah, I would want to start investing in other places. And I think it really does come down to the free agency period and what you can do with any type of trades. If you can pick up some O-line and refurbish that whole line during free agency and just get anybody that's better. Oh, shit, what are they doing it? Oh, God.
Here we go again. We got the Commanders. We got the commissioner coming back out to the podium. What's going on? The Washington Commanders have traded the 2nd overall pick to the Atlanta Falcons for the 8th overall pick, as well as future pick considerations. The Atlanta Falcons are now on the clock. Wow. Another crazy trade. But if I'm the Commanders, that's what I'm doing here. I'm trading back. I like Sam Howell. Like I said, I'm going to give you your stage and your limelight here in the next couple picks for the Commanders. But for right now, the Falcons are on the clock. And again, another quarterback needy team. They have really great pieces surrounding, especially there on offense. But I feel like they're an edge rusher away, or also kind of another wide receiver there. I'm not really impressed with what I've seen out of Drake London. Maybe that's more of the quarterback concerns. But if you're the Falcons, do you, with, pretty much your pick of the litter, aside from Caleb Williams, what are you doing?
If I'm the Falcons and, moving on with this new regime that you have led by Raheem Morris, I look at it as, Drake London, a little bit of a bust, but you also have had issues with Kyle Pitts, who was supposed to be a generational tight end. You have had, somewhat of issues with Bijan Robinson, who was supposed to be a generational running back. I would start to look at that the problem might have been the previous regime and Arthur Smith and that offensive scheme that he had going there. So I'm going to keep relying on them, and I'm going to give them a quarterback that they need right here. I would take Drake May, honestly, right here at number 2 for Atlanta.
I like it. I feel like me and you are definitely on the same wavelength. There's way too much talent and young talent on that Atlanta Falcons roster, and I feel like the problem was that previous regime, and I'm really hoping that Raheem Morris coming in can actually kickstart things down there in Atlanta. But it looks like the commissioner's coming back out to the podium. with the second overall pick. Let's see what's going on now. With the second pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Jaden Daniels, quarterback, LSU. The New England Patriots are now on the clock.
Wow.
See, when I thought Falcons and I thought quarterback, me and you and Zoo talked about this at length. I would love to see if Fields in Chicago gets traded anywhere. It would be Atlanta, hometown kid. He's a very mobile quarterback. I think that's the kind of quarterback that they're going to need to succeed there in Atlanta. And we all saw how Jaden Daniels lit it up this past season in college football, won the Heisman Trophy amongst other accolades. Coming in at 6'4", 210, he can manipulate second and third level defenders like the rest of them. He's really great at, reading the zone coverage. He's really, really quick as far as developing, kind of feel for the game. You kind of saw that in those mid-game adjustments. But, he doesn't have that much zip to the ball. It's kind of slow. I wish he would work on more of his mechanics, especially when it comes to like his balance, because it seems like he relied so much on his legs that he would get crushed. It seemed like every week he had some massive hit laid against him. And I'm really hoping that he kind of slows the game down a little bit, doesn't rely too much on his legs, of course, still having that in his arsenal as a weapon in the future. But Reid, if you were the Falcons, is Jaden Daniels too much of a stretch? Would you rather take the safe bet with Drake May?
I would take the safe bet with Drake May, but honestly, I've seen more of Jaden Daniels. I see the impressiveness there, and I believe he'll bulk up that frame like Lamar Jackson did coming out of college and coming out of Louisville. But you know what? Like, they got so much talent there in Atlanta, just like you were saying. There's so much young talent surrounding that. I think it would be a great spot for Jaden Daniels. He needs to go somewhere, kind of like Anthony Richardson did with the Colts. The Colts have a decent amount of talent surrounding him to get him a good start. I think this would be a good spot for Jaden.
Right. Moving forward, number 3, we got the New England Patriots, another quarterback needy team. They have Bailey Zappi there. You have Mac Jones there. Who knows what's going on? You got Jared Mayo taking over the helm. And I know he's kind of been linking himself. He's already kind of came out saying that they're going to take a quarterback at 3, and they're kind of more higher on Jaden Daniels. But, with the Falcons picking ahead of him and not having that option, I still feel they're going to go quarterback. Aside from that, they could really use some wide receiver help or some help there in the offensive front, maybe at tackle. Reid, if you're newly promoted Jared Mayo, what are you trying to do with this pick?
You got to go quarterback there. You got to go quarterback with New England. It's weird to see 3 go in a row, but if I'm New England, I'm sticking to what Mayo's word was when he was first introduced and saying, you know what we're going to do.
Right. Exactly. So let's see what's going to be happening here at number 3. With the third pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select Drake May, quarterback, UNC. Yep. Yeah, it just makes too much sense. Especially with a lot of these teams needing quarterbacks, you got to grab one now while you can. I mean, you can kind of roll the dice on one of these late round flyers, but those usually don't pan out more often than they do. But with Drake May, 6'4", 230 plus, he's prototypical, well-built quarterback, super mobile, generates really high level velocity with, pretty effortlessly. He just kind of snaps that wrist and it just zips right out of his hand. And, he can push that ball on the outside too, past those tight coverages and, with very little, problems. I think for him, it's going to come down to mechanics. I know his footwork is kind of spotty at times, and, it's kind of instability when it comes to kind of those basic mechanics. And I think going to New England, even though Belichick is not there anymore, I feel he probably would do a lot more for the franchise than any quarterback that's currently on their roster. Would you reach for another quarterback at this point, aside from Drake May, if he's available? You still have, JJ McCarthy sitting there. You got Bo Nix. Do you think they could sneak up into that top 3 range, or is Drake May just the obvious choice?
I wouldn't say into the top 3 or even top 5. Honestly, I wouldn't even say into the top 10, even though Jim Harbaugh has, saying on Colin Cowherd's show that JJ McCarthy should be the number 1 quarterback taken off the board. I don't agree with that whatsoever. I think that you can get a lot of value a little later in the first round, early in the second round. Drake May is about, I think these three quarterbacks that we've just had go off the board are the top tier that you can get the safest bets this season.
Yeah, they're definitely the ones with the highest ceiling. I think the biggest project would be Jaden Daniels, but I have a lot more faith with him going to a team that's just surrounded with talent there in Atlanta. But aside from these three, they're the cream of the crop when it comes to the quarterback room. Of course, things are pending to change after private workouts and pro days and the combine and things of that nature. But right now, these three stand alone. I do feel you could see a quarterback go later on in the round. You probably have somebody trading back into the first round later on. But for right now, Arizona Cardinals are on the clock. And for me, the biggest needs for them, it's wide receiver. And again, it's some kind of edge rush, something on the D line. And for them specifically, maybe something in the secondary, like a cornerback. Reid, if you're the Cardinals, what are you doing?
If I'm the Cardinals, I think it's the most obvious pick right here. You got to go best overall talent on the board. I think that best overall talent is Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State. I know we've had some discussion on the best receiver on this board, but I think Harrison has the highest ceiling, just like these quarterbacks. So if I'm Arizona, that's what I'm doing. I'm helping out Kyler Murray in every way I can.
All right. Well, Reid's Arizona. He's going Marvin Harrison Jr. With Scott's Arizona, what's Scott going to do? With the fourth pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver, Ohio State University. The Los Angeles Chargers are now on the clock. Yeah, it just makes too much sense. When you outside a quarterback, he's probably the best prospect in the board. I know we go back and forth between him and Rome Odunze as far as the best wide receiver to come out, and I will die on my hill with backing Rome 100%. I think he's going to end up being a better value than Marvin Harrison Jr. But I mean, you look at him, he comes from great stock with Marvin Harrison Sr. playing in the Indianapolis Colts for so long, 6'4", 205, insane athlete, great frame for a wide receiver, especially in today's game. I mean, he just attacks defensive backs. But as far as any kind of knocks, I know he's kind of rumored to have that sub 4.3 speed, when he gives a chance to break away. But watching tape, I don't really see it. I'm really interested to see what he's going to be testing at the combine in these pro days. And it's going to be, he's often kind of brought down, like after he gets that first hit, he kind of just drops. He needs to fight for a little extra yardage, get that yards after catch. And, really, like we talked about with Drake May, it's the fundamentals. Too many times I would watch him and his hands just seem like they're a little too far spread out. You're going to be playing with a lot of these NFL quarterbacks, especially there in Arizona with Kyler Murray slinging the ball around. You got to make sure you have very consistent hands for that offense. And honestly, Reid, I don't think there's really much to discuss there in Arizona. I think that just makes sense.
Yeah, it's the one that makes the most sense there. It's just like you said. I'm very curious to see his tests out at the combine and wherever he's going to be at. But I think he has the most talent. It's the most potential there. He's got a Hall of Fame daddy who can put exactly what he needs into his head and get him ready for this. I think Arizona is going to be a great spot for him.
Well, and what's even more crazy is that you see these NFL franchises who seemingly they just keep on hitting. I mean, you got the Packers who keep on hitting on, franchise quarterback year after year. And same thing now with the Cardinals, it seems like. I mean, they had Larry Fitzgerald there forever coming out of Pitt. And then now you're having Marvin Harrison Jr., who's another one of these generational talents who could end up staying there just as long and trying to bring a Lombardi trophy there in Arizona. I don't get it. Some teams know what to draft at this point, I guess.
They really do. I mean, and that's what you want. That's what I've been looking for with Washington.
Right. And I mean, you bring up the no-brainer pick kind of spin on it. And we got the Chargers here at 5. Their biggest need to me is tight end. They could use some help in the secondary and cornerback or maybe wide receiver with an aging Keenan Allen and Mike Williams gets hurt and Quinn Williams doesn't look like he's panning out to be anything that we ever thought he was going to be. But to me, it's a no-brainer what the Chargers are going to do. Reid, I don't know if you agree with that. What would you do at this point?
I'm curious what you believe the no-brainer is. I think to me, it really just depends on what the offseason, again, goes for LA. They're in salary cap hell. Like they put all their chips on this past season in terms of what they're spending. So you're looking at an offseason where they're potentially going to have to get rid of Khalil Mack, Mike Williams if they can, possibly Joey Bosa too. There are a lot of pieces that they're going to have to. Austin Eckler is going to become a free agent. They'll let him go. He's aged out. This whole team is going to change and rebuild around Justin Herbert. So I would go back to the best player available system. And who do you believe that is right here? I'm curious to see.
Well, let's see what that pick is going to be here at 5, Reid. With the 5th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Chargers select Brock Bowers, tight end, University of Georgia. Yeah, it just seems like a no-brainer. Like you said, they're in salary cap hell. They're gonna have to try to move a lot of these pieces. You have a really great young quarterback there in Justin Herbert, and Jim Harbaugh has a really big task ahead of him to try to rebuild that offense. But when you think about what's the best thing for a young quarterback, and that's your security blanket, and there's no better security blanket than a solid tight end. You see that across the league with every team. Every team needs that stud tight end, and if that's really the only missing piece there on offense, it has to be Brock Bowers. 6'4", 240, insane size. His release against the secondary is insane. There's no wasted movement in any of his routes, but he's not really that aggressive when attacking the football. I guess you really don't have to be when you're head and shoulders above a bunch of these defensive backs there, even in the SEC. So he's going to be tested a lot more in the NFL. And even though he's a really great blocker, he doesn't really fit the mold for like a prototypical blocking tight end. So I would like to see him build a little bit more. And he's young, so he could still grow a little bit. But I think if I'm the Chargers, it just makes sense to take the best person on the board, and that's Brock Bowers.
And if Jim Harbaugh is really about that action and talking about, J.J. McCarthy should be the number one, fuck it. Hey, why don't you get ballsy, trade Justin Herbert and take J.J. McCarthy right there?
Ooh, see, and I never thought about that angle. If I don't know if I could do that. If J.J. McCarthy is sitting there at some later round, which he probably will end up being, I don't know who the backup is in L.A. for the Chargers, but J.J. McCarthy could be making an appearance.
He'd be hella better than Easton Stick.
Right, Easton Stick. And what's even more confusing for me is the Giants right now. You got the Giants here at 6. It feels like they have needs everywhere. You could potentially see Saquon Barkley leaving. They have wide receiver depth issues, quarterback issues, even though they just gave Daniel Jones all that money. They got offensive line issues as well. Reid, I know how much you love the NFC East, especially the Giants. Aside from them trading this pick to you guys for free, what would you rather them do?
Brock Bowers would have been ideal for them, I think, in that particular spot. Their defense has been solid enough. I think they've built up enough there. We haven't seen an O-lineman taken yet. I like to see the best O-lineman starting to be taken around pick 6, pick 7, that area. So I could see them going for that. I believe it's a tackle from Penn State.
Oh, Olu Fashanu?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you got him there. You got J.C. Latham out of Alabama. You got Amarius Mims from Georgia. You got Joe Alt from Notre Dame on the outside. Some great people. There's some great interior linemen as well. So Reid's going to go with an offensive line. You're right. This is usually when the offensive lines come off the board. So let's see what the Giants are doing. With the 6th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Malik Neighbors, wide receiver, LSU. The Tennessee Titans are now on the clock. I have him going wide receiver. I have him giving Daniel Jones just another weapon. If for anything, even if they do end up moving on from Daniel Jones, to make it a little bit more desirable for a quarterback, especially if I hope they can retain Saquon. I don't have a lot of faith they're going to be doing that. So if you're going to lose that, you got to find the production elsewhere. But I don't hate the tackle pick. I don't hate that for them.
No, I think you got to. I would still like to see them give Andrew Thomas, a little more help on that line. I mean, look, they brought Justin Pugh famously off the couch to come help out their O-line in the middle of the season. So who knows what they could address it in free agency through trades. Malik Neighbors is a beast, so that would help. I would hate to see it as a fan. I'd hate to see him in the.
And it's wild to see how dominant he can be, especially only coming in at 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's not the biggest guy out there on the field, but I mean, he's a hard-nosed receiver. He plays physically. He naturally separates from coverages very easily. But he's still growing as a route runner. He's still kind of raw there. His run blocking to him, I guess, is optional. Maybe he wants to do it. Maybe he doesn't want to do it. But if you're going to retain Saquon, you need to have somebody on the outside who's going to be able to block a little bit. So hopefully they can kind of get him up to speed there. Moving on to the Titans, Reid, I think this might be where you see your first offensive tackle come off the board. Because for me, that is their biggest need, is the tackle position, followed by wide receiver, even though they like to trade every wide receiver they ever receive. And then also the secondary help as well. Are you still going to go tackle there with the Titans? Or are you going to move in a different direction?
I would go tackle. I would go tackle here. Somebody like Joe Alt from Notre Dame. I would go tackle right around there. Tennessee was building a great O-line for a while there, between Taylor Lewan and Jack Conklin, some great pieces right in the middle. They need to get back that way, especially if they're going all in on Will Levis. Help him out with the O-line.
Well, he needs some help. So let's see if the Tennessee Titans are going to bring the big boy help for Will Levis. With the 7th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Joe Alt, tackle, Notre Dame. The Washington Commanders are now on the clock. That's right. And I know you just heard the Commanders are back on the clock now, Reid, but let's just back it up for a second. Yeah, Joe Alt makes the most sense here. They were building a great thing there in Nashville for their offensive line. It's something reminiscent of what the Dallas Cowboys like to do, and they need to repivot. He is massive man, 6'8", 315. He was a former tight end, which is actually really cool to know. So he has really great, movement skills. He can instantly close a gap with explosiveness, which is really needed on the outside, especially with, it seems like every team has 2 very dominant edge rushers nowadays. So you need someone who's going to be quick on the outside. But for him, it's just, I feel like even with him being 315, I think his strength needs to build up a little bit more. I think that just goes back to, with Notre Dame is exclusively playing football with the ACC folks. You don't really need it that much. And, he has an exceptional power profile, but sometimes he just struggles with drive after contact. He kind of just hits and just kind of just sits there with them, which these young tackles can kind of get caught into holding situations. So hopefully they kind of clear that up there in Tennessee. But yet we are back at pick number 8, and the Commanders are back on the board. I already discussed my top 3, areas of that they need to kind of address as quarterback, tackle, and edge. Reid, I'm going to give you your soapbox back.
I mean, you're 100% right. Quarterback, tackle, and edge are the top 3 right there. They need help at just about any position that you could think of. Defensive back as well. Even wide receiver, you could use some help with Terry McLaurin. Or if you're trying to get rid of Terry at this point, he's going to be 29, and you're going into a rebuild phase. Do you want to keep rolling with that? But the O-line was the biggest issue by far last season and the last few seasons. And if you're going to roll with Sam Howell here, help him out. Get somebody like Fashanu from Penn State at tackle. If you got to go edge, I like Dallas Turner from Alabama. There's a lot of help there, but I think O-line needs to be the crutch right here. You got to go with that crux and fix that piece. Help out your guys.
All right. Well, let's see what we're going to do here at pick number 8. With the 8th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Washington Commanders select Dallas Turner, edge, Alabama. The Chicago Bears are now on the clock.
I don't hate it though. Like, I am right there with you. Like, if I'm the Commanders, and if like this is all played out in Scott's hypothetical world, and you're sitting there, you have Dallas Turner, and then you have Olu Fashanu sitting there, the tackle out of Penn State. Like, you're in a really difficult decision mode because you need both. Like, it would be great to have both, but I feel like the tackle position is relatively deep, and you see year in and year out that you can hit on an offensive lineman deeper into the draft. You know, the Commanders have 2 picks coming up in the second round as well, so they can kind of address the line back to back at that point. The edge rushers has just become such a prominent and important role there for the defensive positions in the NFL. And you have a talent like Dallas Turner, 6'4", 242, high end, explosive, great change of direction ability. He's fluid and flexible, athletic. He can even kind of dump out and kind of survive underneath his own coverage if really needed. I really would like to see him improve his footwork a little bit, trying to cut in on those sharp angles back onto the inside, and then also kind of add some poundage with 240. I'd like to see him hit the 250 mark, but yeah, I think you're just in a bad spot. I like the conversation for both, but that's just at this point what I would do.
It's just like I've been saying, best player available in a lot of these spots, and especially if Washington is trading back and falling to, the mid or late of the top 10, you got to go best player available. Fashanu's really great. O-line, it's needed, but best player available at this spot, I can't argue with Dallas Turner, especially now that you have Dan Quinn, defensive-minded head coach. Turner reminds me, I could see him fitting in kind of that Micah Parsons kind of spot that Dan Quinn likes to have in that defensive scheme that he runs.
Right. You can have him with his hands down. You can have him standing up and kind of playing back a little bit. I think, when I watch the tape, Micah Parsons is actually a really great comp for him. And I would be very excited to see what Dan Quinn does with a talent like that.
But for a long time with Quinn, from, going from, I think it was KJ Wright in Seattle, developing into that piece. You had people like that over in Atlanta and now to Dallas. Give me Dallas Turner for that.
Absolutely. And now the Chicago Bears are back on the board now too with their 9th pick. Kind of talked about it there very briefly before the commissioner rudely interrupted Reid and canceled his discussion. But quarterback, wide receiver, edge rusher, all of areas of need there in Chicago. Reid, when you're looking at the big board, I mean, you have Olu Fashanu still sitting there at tackle. I know they could really use some supporting help there for Justin Fields if they want to go that route to make sure he's being protected. You have Roma Dunze still sitting there. You got the dynamic duo cornerbacks there in Alabama and Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry. Are you trying to build more around Fields, or are you trying to address the defensive side of the ball at this point in Chicago?
If you've made that decision to go with Fields and not take Caleb Williams at number 1 and you're falling back, I think you got to commit to it. You got to give him. You have to do what the Buffalo Bills did for Josh Allen a few years back, which is just overload him with weapons. Give him everything that he can. And you got DJ Moore last year, great receiver. Depending on what they do in free agency, they're going to need another receiver to help him out there. I think Roma Dunze would be a fantastic compliment.
I like it. Let's see what the pick is.
With the 9th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Jared Verse, edge, Florida State University. The New York Jets are now on the clock.
It's like Scott Ellia is a Bears fan now.
Listen, the reason that pick was made is because the Chicago Bears have shown time and time again that they typically will miss on a pick like that. When you have Roma Dunze sitting there, you have Olu Fashanu sitting there, you have the great cornerback sitting there, they're going to do something so unexpected and address a situation that doesn't need to be addressed at this point. and they're gonna reach on Jared Verse. I love Jared Verse. I'm trying to be as unbiased as I possibly can as a Florida State fan, but I don't like him in the top 10. Of course, things are they typically change after these pro days, but Jared Verse, he's 6'4", he's 250. He's a very high motor, hyperactive athlete. Moves in really great short bursts. The twitch that he has is uncanny, but he doesn't really have elite like strength and mass and like length to him. I mean, he's 6'4", 250, which to me is insane, but I guess on the field it's not that much. And same thing we kind of discussed with Dallas Turner. I really want to see him work on his footwork and really be able to cut those hyper acute angles and being able to accelerate through the ball. But yeah, I'm just banking on the Chicago Bears just balking and just fucking up the 9th pick.
I can get down with that. That 100% feels like a Bears thing, and especially keeping their regime, keeping their general manager and everything that's been going on since. I could see, and this is the time of the draft where this happens. You see this every year where somebody reaches hard in the top 10. This is one. I like Jared Verse too, though.
Not at 9.
Not at 9.
Not at 9. But moving forward, we got number 10. This is the Luis pick. We got the New York Jets. They are on the board at 10, and they seemingly need help all over the place at tackle, wide receiver, tight end. Now that Brock Bowers is off the board, I don't see another tight end coming off the board until well into like the 3rd or 4th round. So that probably isn't the right direction. But Reid, if you're the Jets, you have the question mark of Aaron Rodgers. How much time can you actually get out of him? You saw the issues with Zach Wilson and the supporting cast of whatever quarterback they had the flavor of the week that week. What do you do? What do you do in New York except for just throwing the towel?
Tackle. You gotta go. You just had your quarterback that was supposed to change your franchise go down within the first couple of minutes of the first game. You gotta address that line. I don't care how many you pick up during free agency. You got you got to get the best available too. Fuck it, put them on the D line too, just to make sure. Just O line, just blocking for. Just do whatever you can. You got to protect them. Even if they're just standing in front of Aaron Rodgers on the sideline, get all the O linemen you can.
Oh God, well, let's see if the Jets are going to pull a Bears and balk on the 10th pick.
With the 10th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Olomu Shanu, tackle, Penn State. The Minnesota Vikings are now on the clock.
Good on the commissioner for getting that name.
You know how many takes it probably took that commissioner to get that? Probably took him a couple. But no, the Jets, that just makes the most sense. If you have Olu Fashanu sitting there at 6'6", 320, tall, strong, sturdy frame, he gets amped up real quick, great athleticism, strength that I would, if I saw him in a dark alleyway, hell, if I saw him in broad daylight in the middle of, I don't know, what's the happiest place on earth?
Compton?
Compton? Yeah, well. I have other problems if you see me just walking around in the middle of the day in Compton. But either way, it's just, very minimal kind of cons, grip strength, which is meh, it's all right. Change of direction. But when you're 6'6", 320, change of direction is going to be always an issue no matter how athletic you are. But yeah, when you had your beacon of hope go down within the first 5 minutes, and it just seemed like everybody was getting attacked from all angles all year long. You have to go tackle. You just have to.
Mm-hmm. Can't agree more.
And the next team up, you got the Minnesota Vikings here at 11. I know there's been some question marks with Kirk returning. I know his asking price is, what was it, 90 million guaranteed?
I think so.
It was a big ticket price, but you have issues on the defensive side with edge and secondary. You got, especially with, if you're going to have, Danielle Hunter potentially leaving at some point, you're going to need some more weapons there on defense. Offense, it seems like they're doing okay. I think the biggest question mark right there is quarterback. But if you are in the motherland of Minnesota, Reid, what are you doing?
I guess it really does depend on what happens with Kirk, right? If they re-sign Kirk, sure, you can move on to some of those other pieces, and I don't know, maybe help out that D line somewhere in the defensive backfield. There's a corner, I think, from Iowa, if I'm trying to remember the name right. That might be able to help.
DeJean.
Yeah, Cooper DeJean might be able to help out. Yeah, so I would go around that route. I would say I will be safe here and go with the defensive route for Minnesota.
Well, let's see if we're on the same wavelength, Reid. How about that?
With the 11th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Laiatu Latu, edge, UCLA. The Denver Broncos are now on the clock.
Yeah, I think defense is definitely the move that the Minnesota Vikings would have to play at this point. And Laiatu Latu is just a stud. We talked about him kind of briefly in the preseason talk on College Shame Day. I think it was like the inaugural episode. We kind of name dropped him for a player to watch. I mean, 6'5", 260, strong, compact frame, great, solid length, good mass, explosive. He's got a really great twitch to him. Arm length isn't elite. He's got some little baby arms, little T-Rex arms. But I mean, if he's standing up and you can kind of give him an extra step or two to kind of pick up some speed, I have a lot of faith there in Minnesota with him. But you bring up Cooper DeJean, and you got the Denver Broncos here at 12, and I know they really need a cornerback as well. I don't know if the Russell Wilson experiment is going to last any much longer. I know they could probably use a young quarterback kind of sitting behind them. Speaking about quarterbacks, you have JJ McCarthy still sitting there. You got Bo Nix. I know we're in the top 12, but maybe the Denver Broncos are getting a little trigger happy and they want to get some kind of young quarterback talent in there. But if you're Denver and Sean Payton, Reid, what are you doing?
Well, I mean, the Russell Wilson era definitely seems to be over after that benching late in the season. Definitely they want to get away from that contract. I don't truly know what they're doing there in Denver, to be honest with you. And I guess they would have to go the quarterback route. Michael Penix Jr. possibly as an option. I like that. I think he could impress in his combine tests and interviews, especially being the savvy vet of college football. So I'm going to go quarterback here for Denver. And I'm going to say it's a reach too.
Ooh, they do seem like a team that could reach, but let's see.
With the 12th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Terrion Arnold, cornerback, Alabama. The Chicago Bears are now on the clock.
Yeah, I sat there and I started thinking about it. This would be a team that would reach for a quarterback at some point, at 12. But I think especially we saw how much their secondary was getting torched last year. I know you have Patrick Surtain Jr. there. I think there's been talks that he might be even gone at this point. He might not be around.
I honestly feel like that culture is just going to shatter there in Denver with whatever Sean Payton has brought. So I would be surprised to see Surtain request a trade.
Right. I mean, especially if you got Terrion Arnold sitting there, 6 foot, $196. He's pretty much the prototypical cornerback kind of build. Cocky, confident, physical. He's definitely the kind of cornerback that you want to be the cornerstone of your defense for years to come. But I think he needs to trust his athleticism a little bit more, especially in zone coverages. He's definitely less comfortable within the slot. So with him being a younger cornerback, I know they typically try to shove those younger corners in the slot to try to better understand the game as far as a learning curve goes. So I'm interested to see if that actually transpires. But yeah, I don't think Denver even knows what Denver's doing at this point.
No, they truly don't. And I like that you brought up Cooper DeJean earlier as a potential cornerback piece for Denver, especially since Iowa's got a thing lately with white corners because Denver also drafted Riley Moss.
Yep.
The prolific white corner.
Could you imagine an NFL defense whose top 2 cornerbacks are both white on the outside?
Oh, it's Bill Belichick's wet dream.
Oh, but moving on, we got the Raiders pick here at 13. Oh, it's not the Raiders because they had traded to the Chicago Bears. They're back on the board at 13. Like we talked about before, their biggest needs were, quarterback, wide receiver, and edge before they drafted Jared Verse. Now I'm actually moving up that offensive tackle slot there to number 3. Reid, you still have Rome Odunze still sitting here at 13. You got Keon Coleman from Florida State. You got J.C. Latham sitting there. You got Chop Robinson. They don't even go after Chop with having an edge, but like if Rome's still sitting there after you balked on 9, you got to take him, right?
Yeah, I feel like that's the universe, and I don't feel like Chicago would fuck it up twice. It's usually you rarely see teams fuck it up twice. That's a Raiders thing.
With the 13th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback, Alabama. The New Orleans Saints are now on the clock.
They're going to fuck it up. They are this generation's Raiders. They're going to fuck this draft up. They had all this draft capital. They're going to squander it, and I'm going to laugh. They have his dynamic duo partner, Terran Arnold, before him. We got Kool-Aid McKinstry coming off the board, 6'1", 195. Insane zone coverage awareness, great length and knowledge and how to use it. Great bump and run. I think his biggest knock is just slowing down. Trust, like patience, commitment around that goal line. He's naturally fluid, but he just plays way too fast. He just needs to slow down just a little bit. Reid, could you imagine a world where Chicago was set up like that with the number 1 overall pick, and then they had the number 9 overall pick, and then they reach on 2 guys? It's possible, right? It could happen.
I was going to say, I sadly could imagine it 100%. Some would say maybe at this pick, maybe they drank the Kool-Aid.
Hey.
I liked
it. I did like it. And from a marketing aspect, I mean, like I said, it's February 2nd. It is it's Black History Month. It's Chicago. I would imagine Kool-Aid sales are relatively high in Chicago. It's a great marketing ploy.
I have never, I haven't been a particular fan of the name Kool-Aid for somebody of the culture. I think it's a little too on the nose for like some 70s good time stereotypes. But you do you, bro. Like
whatever.
It works. Kool-Aid McKinstry. I mean, it worked. The syllables they pan out. So good luck, Chicago.
Well, before I say any other cancelable offenses, we got the New Orleans Saints here at 14, Reid. They're definitely one who could use a wide receiver as well as another edge rusher and a tackle. It seems like a lot of these teams in the top 15 typically need a lot of the same things. But Rome Odunze is still sitting there. Is there anybody else that you like more than Rome at 14 for the Saints? Especially for help for Derek Carr?
For the Saints, and especially like that you need to get Derek Carr back on track, right? So this kind of happened a couple years back when they got Chris Olave. I could see the reaching into the same situation and getting a really cool pairing of Chris Olave and Rome Odunze.
Ooh, I'd be scared. Could you imagine that pairing? That is wild. But let's just see. Let's just wait.
With the 14th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select Rome Odunze, wide receiver, Washington. The Indianapolis Colts are now on the clock.
Yeah, if Rome Odunze, who's like a top 10 talent in this year's draft, dropping all the way to 14, you already have Chris Olave there. You have Derek Carr, who can be a great quarterback for you as long as he has pieces around him. I think they do have a lot of question marks there in the backfield for the Saints. I think they'll address later on in the draft. There's some really great running backs this year. But I think especially with Michael Thomas just being a shell of who he was, and they're probably going to end up moving on from him, having a talent like Rome Odunze at 6'3", 215, elite athlete, really versatile when it comes to stretching the field. But I would like to see him work on his strength and his speed just a little bit to keep up with the boys in the NFL. Yes, he played in Washington, but it's Washington. You got to see who they were playing this past year. He didn't really have to have that much effort, but yeah, I would like to see him just work on the physicality part of his game, not so much the X's and O's to it. Does that make a lot of sense to you, Reid?
That sounds right. And I think New Orleans would be a good spot for that.
And I feel bad for the Colts because the Colts are here at 15, and they're another team that are really needy of a wide receiver. Michael Pittman Jr. is probably going to be coming out, going to another team. They could really use some help on the defensive side of the ball as well there at corner and with the defensive front and edge. But with Rome Odunze coming off the board, you have Keon Coleman still sitting there. At this point, at wide receiver, you got Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU. You got Adonai Mitchell. You got Xavier Legette from South Carolina. But Reid, if you're the Colts, like, do you potentially trade back at this point and try to get something more? Or do you just pull the trigger on somebody?
I think it's a good spot to trade back if you can. I think anywhere in this mid, unless you're trying to sneak on a quarterback somewhere in that 15 to 20 range, it's always a good chance to trade back for somebody that, might be desperately reaching for somebody. Colts are a pretty well-run organization for the most part. Get some assets if you can. Otherwise, I guess you're going to need some receiving help for Anthony Richardson as he comes back. Keon Coleman could be a spot right here.
With the 15th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Nate Wiggins, cornerback, Clemson. The
I like that too.
Seahawks are now on the clock.
Yeah, I would love to see them trade back. But I have a lot of faith there in Indianapolis for them to try to retain Michael Pittman Jr. Them maybe kick the can down the road a little bit longer for the next generational wide receiver. I would actually laugh if they traded up to grab Marvin Harrison Jr. somehow. That would be hilarious to me. But if you're not going to go wide receiver, you got to address the secondary. And Nate Wiggins is one of the best at it this year, coming out of Clemson, 6'2", 185. Long, lean cornerback, excellent efficiency of motion. He definitely throttles up in closing speeds, which is what you want, especially in the NFL, to try to close that gap a little bit. But it's another one of those guys. He's 185. I would like to see his frame fill out a little bit more, but it's not bad having a scrappy little cornerback every once in a while. But at 6'2", I mean, thankfully he's got the height to keep up.
Yeah, I was gonna say that height, 6'2" helps, and 185 right now. Typically, these guys, as they go through the combine, they put on about, you can get about a good, 6 to 8 pounds added on there, and it's usually, some pretty decent muscle, so you'll get some sizable difference.
Well, if Nate Wiggins, shout out to you. If you're trying to gain some weight, come hang out with me for a week, bro. Apparently, I got no problem doing it.
Come to the ramen spot.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, man. And think about pulling your weight. You got the Seattle Seahawks. You're moving on from Pete Carroll. They got the new regime coming in there now. Another team that really could use a nice young quarterback there, as well as really defensive front. Edge, D-line, defensive tackle, nose tackle, something on the defensive front. Reid, if you're Seattle, this is another one of those picks that you could potentially trade back if you really were trying to feel a little squirrely. But what would you do?
I would go anywhere but receiver, honestly, for them. I think they've been doing pretty well there. Honestly, Seattle has been pretty decent in a lot of spots. Linebacker they could use some help there. Bobby Wagner's starting to age out, might leave again in free agency. I would look somewhere in that defensive, pass coverage area. Give me a linebacker.
With the 16th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select Jer'Jon Newton, nose tackle, Illinois. The Jacksonville Jaguars are now on the clock.
Belly.
Yeah, the pick alone is the reason why he got picked here at this point. But no, I mean, 6'2", 295, like you said, in regards to Nate Wiggins, a lot of these younger guys, they will fill out. I mean, they're still not matured by any means as far as physical wise. So he's definitely going to push that 300 pound mark here soon. But he, very natural as far as, leveraging his body against the interior line. He high energy, explosive. Like I said, really the biggest knock I have for him is just building his size a little bit. Maybe he can grow another inch or two in the next couple of years, potentially. But that's really going to hinder his, maximizing on power and extension off some of these interior linemen there in Seattle. Jacksonville. This is another pick that you could, like you said, a lot of these mid first round picks, a lot of like the marquee names are off the board. You're either drafting the best person available, which we've kind of already seen. You could reach or you could trade. Jacksonville, they could really use some help on the outside at wide receiver and at corner, and then also at the edge. Reid, if you're down there in Jacksonville with Mr. Khan, what are you doing?
I would, at this spot, probably go at corner. I think corner is your top need. You can do a best player available kind of situation here, but I think Calvin Ridley did pretty well at wide receiver last season for them, for somebody that coming off of being out of the game for a year plus. I would just keep building up there, that D line and, the edge. Your guy from who was it that they took number 2 overall a couple years ago? He's played pretty much up to, the standard of what he was looking like in college, even though they reached.
Oh, yeah.
I would go corner here to help out that secondary. They got torched a good amount of times. You couldn't really trust them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
With the 17th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Kamari Lassiter, cornerback, University of Georgia. The Cincinnati Bengals are now on the clock.
Yeah, corner just makes way too much sense. They were getting torched all year long. And you talk about the corners that are kind of available. You got Cooper DeJean still sitting there from Iowa. You have Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo sitting there, and you have Kamari Lassiter. I think with him being being from that area, I think the biggest knock for Cooper DeJean, people are saying it's a white guy. They're going to move him to safety. He's not going to be a cornerback. So they don't really need the safety help, but you have, it's really rare for a program like Georgia to produce someone who's not going to hit at that point. It'll happen, but the odds of it happening are very slim. He's 6 foot 180. He passes routes off easily and it protects the post. He's really quick when it comes to jumping into zone. But I feel like he can get compromised, especially within that 5-yard NFL contact window. I think he might be one who might struggle with it being a little bit too handsy. And I think he could be one he could be caught peeking too much and letting some down the field pass kind of connect. But I do like Kamari Lassiter coming out, especially there in Jacksonville. Moving on to 18, Cincinnati Bengals. They could be without T. Higgins. They could need to fill that vacuum real quick there at wide receiver. Joe Burrow is going to be coming back after his injury this year. He also is one of those quarterbacks that seemingly is just a magnet for sacks and gets punished. So they definitely need some help on the offensive front. And don't forget about the defensive front. I could really use some D-line help there in Cincinnati as well. Reid, are you going to try to protect Burrow or give Burrow a weapon?
I'm trying to protect him. I think that's something that Cincinnati has been needing to do now for a while. But it's going to be interesting at wide receiver because you say like T. Higgins very possibly going to leave for some top tier money. They're also going to more than likely lose Tyler Boyd, who's been a sneaky, really good number 3 wide receiver for them for a long time in Cincinnati. He's supposed to hit free agency this year. So you can't go wrong, I think, going at wide receiver, but damn, Burrow needs help, man. Look at this injury history already. You're starting to get some shades of Andrew Luck with the Colts and how they just beat the hell out of him and beat him into pretty much being a, revolutionary or Civil War reenactor or whatever the fuck he's doing now.
With the 18th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Cincinnati Bengals select J.C. Latham, tackle, Alabama. The Los Angeles Rams are now on the clock.
Yeah, you got to protect them. And really, this comes from a depth kind of issue this year in the draft. I mean, wide receiver, it's riddled from the top down. Yeah, you have Keon Coleman sitting there. You got Brian Thomas Jr. sitting there. But I mean, you got to look at a lot of these guys later down the line. I mean, you got Jamari Thrash from Louisville. You got Malik Washington from Virginia. Ricky Pearsall from Florida. Oh, don't forget about big body Johnny Wilson from Florida State. He's going to be one of those guys who get picked up in like the second to third round. So you have the potential of hitting on a wide receiver later on in the draft. But when it comes to tackle, I mean, aside from J.C. Latham, I mean, you got Amarius Mims from Georgia. You got Talisa Fuagwa from Oregon State. You got Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. I mean, you got some good tackles, but like if your biggest issue right now is protecting your quarterback, you got to take the best available offensive lineman, and that's J.C. Latham out of Alabama, 6'6", 360. I mean, talk about just a specimen of a man. I mean, he's just thick, just a thick man.
It's like the rich wife from Christmas Vacation talking about Cousin Eddie. He's just this hulking, burly, bulging man.
Right. And it's like I'm hoping that's really his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. It's like one of those quintessential answers you give to a job interview. What's your greatest weakness? And you just say it's your greatest strength. And that is his just size. I mean, he kind of can lumber a little bit. It's kind of slow when he's trying to rotate his hips and try to, protect that edge against one of these rushers. So hopefully they can trim him down just a hair and try to improve his speed a little bit there in Cincinnati. But yeah, you need to protect Burrow. Moving on to the Rams, we got the LA Rams here at 19. Another team that needs an edge rusher. Cornerback seems to be a very consistent thread as far as people's needs. Offensive tackle. Reid, if you're the Rams and you're Sean McVay, we saw how beat up Matthew Stafford was getting this year. Are you trying to protect him as well, like Joe Burrow, and trying to squeeze the last little juice that you can out of Matthew Stafford? Or are you trying to potentially replace, Aaron Donald, who could be leaving and retiring any day now, it seems?
I think that you're trying to go O-line if they still have the pick here, but I think this is a sneaky area where I could see the Rams trading this pick at some point during the offseason and trying to pick up somebody, in a trade. They've never really been one to care too much about first round picks, and especially now that they're feeling extra confident with these fifth round studs and Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua. I wouldn't be shocked to see LA not even have a pick here.
Right.
With the 19th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Rams select Talisa Fuagwa, tackle, Oregon State. The Pittsburgh Steelers are now on the clock.
This commissioner is just killing it with the names.
I'm telling you, it sounds like he practiced the names multiple times before actually recording it. But no, I think you're right. I didn't think about it from that angle. If any team is going to trade their first round pick pre-draft, it's going to be the Rams. They don't really need any help on the outside at wide receiver. The running back game could be addressed later on. You don't really need to reach on anybody in the first round unless somebody completely just beats the bricks off of the talent later on down the road. But, him coming in at 6'6", 334, he's a mountain of a man, just like J.C. Latham is. Explosive. He just erupts at the snap of the ball. But even though the length is there, it's kind of a notch below what I would consider like elite, especially when you need to have that length to combat the speed on the outside. Because he really isn't the fastest when it comes to, turning your hips and flexibility. So, but I think especially with how thin the tackle position is now at this stage in the game, you got to just pull the trigger if they end up keeping the pick. But the pick that I'm most excited about with this whole draft is pick 20 with the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they need help everywhere, top to bottom, left to right, all around. I know their biggest issues are probably more on the offensive line. Try to give one of these young quarterbacks a fighting chance, maybe on the outside of the ball in the defense and cornerback. But I mean, you got Bo Nix sitting here. You got JJ McCarthy. are you going to roll the dice again on one of these early round quarterbacks that seem to be too much of a risk, or are you going to take a sure thing?
I think that'll be the storyline going into this for the Steelers is, all the looks at a potential quarterback replacement for Kenny Pickett. But I think that knowing Tomlin and Tomlin's dedicated loyalty, not only to coaching staffs, but how long he just left Ben Roethlisberger out there, I think they're going to give Kenny Pickett at least one more shot. They're going to go with some type of surefire pick, just somewhere to help out that perfectly mid team outside of TJ Watt.
With the 20th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Amarius Mims, tackle, University of Georgia. The Miami Dolphins are now on the clock.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, too. I think they're going to try to give Kenny Pickett one last shot there in Pittsburgh. I could also see Pittsburgh trying to make a push for, say, Kirk Cousins. Maybe try to entice him to come in there. Especially like if you bring him in there for another 2 or 3 year deal, retain Pickett and just go the way of, Patrick Mahomes and a lot of these very successful quarterbacks now. Let him sit behind a talent like Kirk Cousins. I mean, you couldn't think of another veteran quarterback that you would rather sit behind. Because, I mean, if you were, let's put it this way. If you had Aaron Rodgers, who is Hall of Fame quarterback, there's no denying that, as much as I might have my personal qualms against Aaron Rodgers. But between Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins, like, who would you prefer sitting behind? For me, it'd be Kirk Cousins at this point, because I feel like he'd be more personable and would want to teach somebody.
Yeah, it would 100% be Kirk Cousins for me, too. Kirk just seems like a wonderful person to be around. Rodgers on the meanwhile is Aaron Rodgers. So
right.
That's the route I would go. But I do like this pick. Pittsburgh has needed O-line help for a minute now and tried to address it last year, did not seem to help. And look, we've already talked about it with Georgia. You can't really go wrong with anybody from Georgia.
No, and I think it's this pick, especially with Marius Mims at 6'7", 340, another one of these insanely massive offensive tackles, elite mass and length. He might look just like, 340, you think it's just all fat, but no, like it's not bad weight. Because you see some of these tackles and these offensive line come in and they're just all fat. Not this guy. He is a bad man, and talk about high energy. Hell, there's been times where like he'd be pulling and he's on the outside, like lead blocking someone, and he looks like a damn tight end out there with that speed. And he's 6'7". If you see that freight train running at you, I'm not trying to go after it. But again, that's his biggest knock. He's 6'7". Sometimes his height is Achilles' heel. He does play a little bit tall at times, so try to make sure his fundamentals are there. But I think if you're going to try to entice a quarterback like a Kirk Cousins to come in, you need to have some kind of anchor on the line, and Amarius Mims is an anchor on that offensive line. Oh man, this has been a wild time here at this point. Before we get into 21st pick here, Reid, with the Miami Dolphins, I do want to remind people that even though this is an audio medium, we have been enjoying a nice little slideshow and graphics here. And Reid, where, aside from like maybe paying me off to have you send this to somebody, where could people find this without actually having to talk to me?
I think a great place to go would be the 323 Network on YouTube. And you can see our wonderful faces. You can see the smile on my face as we're watching these beautiful, incredible graphics. And it's making me smile because it not only looks great, but it's also like I was thinking at the beginning of the show. It was like, ooh, I gotta get every player's name down so I can get their picture and throw up in here. I don't have to do shit.
Isn't it great when someone pays you $10 a month and they still do work for you?
Right?
Hey, it's Black History Month. You're welcome. This is your gift. This is your reparations, man.
We're not free, so we're all free. Huh?
But speaking about Black History Month, let's talk about Mike McDaniels for a second there in Miami. It's not even a bad question mark. I don't know what they're gonna do. I think the only thing they really need is offensive line. They don't have question marks anywhere else. Reid, am I crazy thinking that way?
No, you're getting into this. You're getting into this area when you're getting into the the 20 to 32 spot of the playoff teams, where more and more you're going to get best player available here. So whatever talent that you see fit, unless you have some type of sudden retirement on your team or a major loss in free agency, just go with the best talent available here. And I'm curious. I'm curious to see who that is.
Right, and you bring up a point about a sudden retirement, because there have been grumblings and whispers through the grapevine that a Tyreek Hill could retire. He might be cutting it short. I don't know if there's any like validity to that, but you got Keon Coleman still sitting here. I mean, he played at Florida State. He's got a really great following down there in this great state of Florida. Got him going down to South Beach.
Tyreek has talked about a porn career lately, so.
With the 21st pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Troy Fautanu, guard, Washington. The Philadelphia Eagles are now on the clock.
I mean, talk about a chalk pick. I mean, it's just you're picking, a need in the interior line, and he's probably the best offensive interior lineman that you have there. Coming out of Washington, 6'4", 317. He's well built. He's a great blocker, unnaturally elastic. I mean, you see some of the blocks that he was giving off. And I mean, just look at the picture. I mean, we got another one of these guys who just puts it all out there, and he don't give a flying French, Reid. He just does not care. But I think he's going to be another one of these guys. He's a Pac-12 guard. I mean, who is he really going up against? I mean, yeah, he had some really great games and played in the national championship and this and that. And he was protecting Michael Penix on his unfortunate Heisman run that he did not win. But I mean, this is another team that you could easily see trade back.
I honestly could. And I like this, though, at O-line, because that was a spot with Miami. I mean, obviously their defense took a huge hit towards the end of the season, but kind of an underrated part of what fell apart for Miami there at the end was not only do you have Terron Armstead, a potential Hall of Fame tackle, who you're almost guaranteed injury every year. You just need it at the right time. He got injured a little bit near the end of the season, but they also lost Connor Williams, who was an interior O-lineman there and turned out to be an integral piece, especially when you lose your center or one of those guards. You could watch the entire thing crumble on your O-line. So getting something and somebody like Fautanu who can really help boost that and, give whatever extra needed protection you can to keep Tua healthy, that's where you need to go.
Absolutely. And another team that just doesn't seem to have really that many needs at 22, you got the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think we're both kind of in agreement based off of previous conversations, secondary and wide receiver. That's what they need. You got Jason Kelce coming back, who's flirting for retirement. You got him coming back, so maybe not reach on another interior lineman. They've been attacking the defensive side of the ball up front and with their linebackers, and I think that's one area they've kind of kicked to the wayside. You got to see him getting burnt on the back end there in Philly. Would you agree with that statement, Reid, or am I missing something here too?
No, I completely agree with it. I think defense is the biggest help they need. O-line, they'll be fine enough there. A.J. Brown will get over whatever he needs to get over. DeAndre Swift, if they can keep him around, is huge for that run.
Smith he's still learning at this point.
Right. And so, yeah, their defense was getting crushed. They tried to take a swing, an admirable swing at Darius Leonard or Shaquille Leonard there towards the end of the season at linebacker, but he's injuries have taken a toll on him. He's aged out quite a bit. You need some type of help at linebacker. That seems like it's been the desperate need for them for a few years, and especially after losing TJ Edwards.
With the 22nd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select Cooper DeJean, cornerback, Iowa. The Houston Texans are now on the clock.
That's a Nick Sirianni delight.
Right. And see, I am right there in agreement with you at the linebacker sentiment, but like the linebacker class that are coming out here, yeah, you have Jeremiah Trotter Jr. from Clemson. You got Jalen Ford from Texas. We talked about him a little bit. You got Peyton Wilson from NC State. You have some really great linebacker talent, but not like first round linebacker talent. So if you're in that situation and your other problem has been your cornerback safety, I mean, look at Cooper DeJean. I am very excited to see what his combine and his pro days look like. He can play both. And I know he's listed at cornerback, but we all know what they're going to do in Philly. They're going to push him backfield, have him just play safety.
And he's built for it too. That size is a little more good safety size. And honestly, you can the way the defenses are built out now and scheming wise, I mean, they've got Vic Fangio, so I don't know how innovative it's going to be there, but you can scheme some decently sized corners and linebackers into, coverage spots around the linebacker area and relieve guys of that duty.
Right. And especially, like you said, 6'1", 209. That is like when you think safety, like you think around that mark, 6 to 6'2", no more than like 215. He has great fluidity to him, things of that nature. He's really rare when it comes to like his frame as a cornerback. I feel like he would serve better as a safety because I think one of his biggest knocks is, being able to be fluid and really being able to turn his hips with a lot of these routes that are being run by wide receivers with their elite speed. If that's going to be like your biggest Achilles heel, just put him in the back and just let him just watch the ball hawk it. Maybe you have a kind of a Brian Dawkins 2.0 kind of situation. Maybe he just starts playing angry because all the white guys keep being moved to safety and now he's all we got. But hey, it's only going to help out my my all white team here in the future. But you got the Texans at 23, and another team you could easily see move back. They had I think this season was a surprise to everybody. You had CJ Stroud come in there and light it up. You got the likes of Nico Collins on the outside at wide receiver, but I feel like they could still use a wide receiver, and then defensive line. That's really my biggest things for them is wide receiver and defensive line.
I would say the exact same, especially highlighting D-line. I think wide receiver, you're getting Tank Dell back, and hopefully he can come back to, as close to as possible the form that he was at, when he got injured. But, yeah, like you said, that team really just overperformed, and they killed it last year in terms of talent. Hopefully they can – I trust whatever they do here, but I'd go D-line.
With the 23rd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select Keon Coleman, wide receiver, Florida State. The Dallas Cowboys are now on the clock.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, too. It was really kind of a toss-up between Keon Coleman here or Chop Robinson, the edge rusher from Penn State. But I think overproducing is the key word when it comes to the Houston Texans. Like you said, Tank Dell, I don't know what he's going to look like when he comes back. But when you have a freak athlete, I mean, he looks like he was built in a lab with Keon Coleman at 6'4", 215, just effortless when it comes to acceleration and speed. I would like to see his explosiveness just kind of increase just a hair. And just sometimes he was just a little bit too late getting off of a defender, especially on deep routes. So trying to create that separation there in Houston. And I mean, you're going to the AFC South. I mean, right. That's NCAA football anyway. So it should translate well there for him in Houston. And it brings up your second favorite team out of the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys at 24. Like I said with the Giants, aside from them just giving this pick to the Commanders, are the Cowboys just going to go the Cowboys route and just draft another lineman? Or you got question marks on Dak. You got Bo Nix still sitting here. You got JJ McCarthy still sitting here. But if you're the Cowboys, what do you do?
It pains me to say, but this is one area where I always trust the Cowboys is the first round of the draft. They seem to hit every year. They know exactly the right route to go, and you can give that to the son Stephen Jones. You can give it to Will McClay. who's a fantastic talent evaluator. I think O-line is where they need to go. In particular here, you're not getting any younger with Tyron Smith. Zach Martin is getting injured a little more frequently. You hit really, really well a couple years ago with Tyler Smith and the center Tyler Biazas, but you might even be losing him now on that interior side. So, and if there's any tackle that can, potentially replace Terrence Steele, I believe is their right tackle's name, who is definitely the weak link now. Maybe you can punch him inside. Give me somewhere on the O-line for Dallas.
With the 24th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys select Tyler Guyton, tackle, Oklahoma. The Green Bay Packers are now on the clock.
You are 1,000% correct, Reid. It's just they seem to hit on offensive linemen, especially offensive lineman named Tyler. And he's from Oklahoma. He's from the area. And like you said, I mean, they have a kind of avoid the field there in the tackle spot. 6'7", 328, tall, massive blocker, great length and flexibility to him. He's very nimble, especially when you have, Tony Pollard, who likes to break it out to the outside. You have, who's the little short guy, running back that they have there now?
Is it Dowdle? No.
Rico Dowdle.
And Deuce Vaughn.
Yep. So you got to get somebody who's going to have a little bit of wiggle to him. But just like we talked about a little bit ago, his Achilles heel is going to be his size. He's another one of those guys who kind of like play a little bit too straightforward. So getting his fundamentals, back in order, especially there in Dallas. And I trust Dallas, if anything. If I trust Dallas to do anything, it's picking an offensive lineman.
I just see Oklahoma, and I don't know why. Maybe it's the sleepy in me that just like brought back a joke from Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt of just thinking of a all-black production of the play Oklahoma called Alabama.
Make it happen. Make it happen. Give you a blank check and make it happen.
For Black History Month.
For anything.
Right.
But yeah, just for your sake, I think we're both a little bit sleepy. Thankfully, we're at pick 25. We're at the home stretch here, folks. 25, we've got the Green Bay Packers, another one of these teams that could really use a tackle and some secondary help. Reid, what are you doing?
I'd go secondary here. I feel like there's still some decent pieces here at the secondary. Who do we have that's still remaining?
To me, the best secondary individuals would be Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback out of Toledo, and then Cameron Kinchens out of Miami. After that, a lot of these guys are going to be more of that second round, third round kind of flyers.
Give me defensive back here.
Ooh.
With the 25th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Graham Barton, tackle, Duke. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now on the clock.
You don't get your secondary. You don't get it. They're going to get a beast of a man, 6'5", 314, Graham Barton, tackle out of Duke. And I know I listed him at tackle, but he honestly could play anywhere on that line. And the Green Bay Packers, especially with how well you saw Jordan Love play and seemingly with not really that big of a supporting cast outside of Aaron Jones. I mean, everyone else were just big question marks, especially on the outside. I think they're going to have a really hard go at it next season. So try to hedge your bets a little bit and protect your quarterback, bring in a nice young offensive tackle in Graham Barton. But he's another one of those guys where the arm length is just, I mean, you could see it in the picture alone. He's got some short little arms for a tackle.
And I think this is a good pick, especially in an offseason where you're looking financially. If there's anybody that you have to get rid of, it's probably going to be David Bakhtiari. They're fantastic left tackle. He's going to be costing way too much, especially at the injury rate and age that he is right now. You're going to have to say goodbye. You've got some good, O-line pieces, some really young O-line pieces already on the team, but hell, why not add another one? This dude's big. I like him.
He's a big boy. Talk about big boys. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are coming in at 26. This is my pick. And honestly, if it were me, this isn't going to be what the pick is going to be for here in a couple seconds. But if I'm the Buccaneers, I'm probably going to trade back. I'm going to re-sign Baker to his contract. I'm going to extend him out a couple years. He's still relatively young. I'm going to wait, kick the can down the line. I'm not sold on Kyle Trask. I'm not really sold on any of the quarterbacks to come in and be an immediate, better improvement than Baker at this point. But when you look elsewhere, they could really use help on the defensive line there on the edge. They could really use a wide receiver, especially if you're going to be losing Mike Evans there in Tampa Bay. But Reid, what is your opinion?
I fully agree with the trade back option. Look at
that. It doesn't matter what your opinion is.
26th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver, LSU. The Arizona Cardinals are now on the clock.
I feel that they're going to re-sign Mike Evans, but he's getting up there, man. He's getting up there. He doesn't have that many years left in the tank. Bring in a young wide receiver now, especially an LSU wide receiver who seems to translate very well in the NFL. I don't really know of an LSU wide receiver that's in the NFL right now that isn't good. But I mean, he's 6'4", 205. He's really, outstanding length, very explosive. I want to see him work on his route tree and work on his routes, and who better to learn from than the wide receiver who has never had less than 1,000-yard receiving season than Mike Evans. Bring me Brian Thomas Jr.
I'm down for that too. I hope they do re-sign Mike Evans. I would like to see one more good one-team player.
Right. Give him the loyalty contract at this point. That's what you need to do. Give him the loyalty contract. Oh, man. But speaking about loyalty, a franchise that doesn't know anything about loyalty, got the Arizona Cardinals back on the board at 27. Their biggest needs at this point, if they were to go the route that I had them earlier, is edge is probably back up to number 1, and then corner and tackle. Do we really care that much about the Cardinals, Reid?
No, not particularly. Somebody call Josh Rosen. I want to know what he's up to.
With the 27th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Chop Robinson, edge, Penn State.
Yeah, that's a cool name.
Right? I wish I had that kind of a cool name. 6'3", 254. And he earned that nickname because he does play with reckless abandon, just high energy, 3-down defender, hyper elite explosivity out of him. I wish that the length would be there a little bit better, especially for an edge rusher. I could see him standing up a little bit more. But if one of your biggest needs is edge rushing at this point, and your best guy on the board overall is Chop Robinson, you got to go. You got to grab him.
Yes.
Because after this, it gets very thin in that position group. Oh, boy. Moving on. 28 got the Buffalo Bills. Biggest needs for them, wide receiver, corner, and D line. Reid, what do you got?
Honestly, I would go. You're going to have to go wide receiver here. There's a good chance you lose Stephon Diggs to a trade. I don't think that you will. I think his cap is a little difficult, but you're definitely going to lose Gabe Davis in free agency. There's no point in re-signing him. Give me a wide receiver here.
With the 28th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select Cameron Kitchens, safety, Miami. The Detroit Lions are now on the clock.
But see, I agree with you, though. I think they're in trouble in the wide receiver room. You have a lot of question marks. People could potentially, you could field a whole new wide receiver room next season with the questions with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. But like I stated earlier, the wide receiver class this year is so deep, and you can typically hit really well on a wide receiver later on. I mean, look at Puka Nacua. What round was he?
5th.
Right. Like you can hit on a wide receiver late, but if your biggest need, and we would see the Buffalo Bills getting torched on the back end time and time again. And if the best safety available is still there, who's gonna be gone, whether it's in the first round or midway through the second, you got to grab him now. 5'11", 205. Like I said, quintessential build for a safety. I really want to see him work on kind of his closing acceleration and kind of like close those gaps a little bit. Same kind of issues with kind of flexibility, being nimble with a lot of these quick inside routes. But at safety, same thing. You're just pretty much just keeping your eyes on the quarterback and trying to jump the route.
Right. And, to argue with myself originally on here in defense of the defensive back pick, Tre'Davious White is a all-pro corner for them who cannot stay healthy. You can't keep him healthy there. They're probably going to lose some form of the Micah Hyde Jordan Poyer combo that's already aging anyway. So yeah, go ahead and get younger and a little healthier at this position and help yourself out.
Oh boy. And another team that could really use some cornerback help, it's the Detroit Lions. I think that's their biggest need, is that, and then really just defense. Just address the defense in some way, shape, or form. You see a lot of great things, a lot of great flashes, especially there on the offensive side of the ball. But I mean, you got Jared Goff. Yeah, he had his great season, but is it going to be like a kind of a Case Keenum kind of thing? Like this is one great season he had. You're gonna see a drop off next season, or you're gonna trust Jared Goff and just go defense?
I trust Goff enough to roll with him that I've seen enough progression from him year to year now in his tenure in Detroit, and I like Hendon Hooker sitting behind him there. They drafted him a little later, took advantage of the injury. I'd go defense here. I'd go defense here just to help out in that.
With the 29th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Kalen King, cornerback, Penn State. The Baltimore Ravens are now on the clock.
It's a little bit of a reach pick with Kalen King. I have him more like in the second to third round. I mean, you got Quinion Mitchell still sitting there from Toledo. You got TJ Tampa. Talk about a great name from Iowa State. You got Tyler Nubin from Minnesota, who's a safety. But I trust Dan to do the job. I think he has an eye for talent. I think this could be a pick that people are going to be scratching their head at in the moment, but a year, 2 years later down the road, they're going to be, okay, this was a hit kind of situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. They need a corner. They've been needing cornerback help for a while.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then talk about like another team that needs a corner is the Baltimore Ravens. But I mean, I think their biggest need, especially if Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be leaving, is the Baltimore Ravens here at 30. They had a really great run there this season. Hopefully this kind of like silences the doubters that Lamar Jackson has built. I mean, you got Zay Flowers there on one side. Do you want to try to hit again on another phenomenal rookie wide receiver, or are you going to try to get some of these question marks on the defensive side of the ball addressed?
It is so tough with Baltimore because like this is a team that, you would look at and really say like, there's not too many weaknesses here. Right. But wide receiver, I think you do just need to continue to hit it. You're not going to re-sign Odell Beckham. I think he's going to go somewhere, pick up some money, especially having a rebound type season. I'd go wide receiver here, try to help out Zay Flowers.
With the 30th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Baltimore Ravens select Adonai Mitchell, wide receiver, Texas. The Kansas City Chiefs are now on the clock.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. I mean, especially if you're going to try to fill that void that Odell Beckham Jr. does bring. You got a phenomenal talent on one side of the field with Zay Flowers. I feel like pairing him with a talent like Adonai Mitchell, 6'4", 196, long, lean receiver, explosive, coming off the ball. I think his biggest thing is going to be able to stretch that field a little bit more. But when you have Zay Flowers on the other side, you don't really have to worry about stretching the field as much.
No.
And then you got Mark Andrews, who can hit that seam very effortlessly. Adonai Mitchell is going to be that guy who's going to run like a quick 10 kind of like inside slant kind of play. And he's going to bust that loose for a crazy amount of yards after catch. And then here we get to the end of the draft. You got the Chiefs at 31 and the Niners at 32. They are playing in the Super Bowl. So congrats to whomever wins at the end of Super Week. I don't really care either way. Reid, I'm going to ask you a personal question because you already know how I feel about the Super Bowl. Do you really even care this year?
In a weird way, I do. Like I guess I've had to unlock the football fan in me, and I'm looking at potential as it's like at least they're not as boring as the Patriots winning Super Bowls, but the Chiefs. I mean, it could really be a huge dynasty, legacy, legendary approach. This is one of Patrick Mahomes defeated every doubt that I had of him going into this. And then Brock Purdy, I think, is a sensational story. So I've found a way to get myself interested in the Super Bowl.
I feel like whomever is having any Super Bowl parties, part of the drinking game that always seems to happen, whether it's through the commercials that come on or, how long you have to chug your drink for the when they're hitting that note in the national anthem, there has to be an over-underage prop bet for how many times Taylor Swift is shown on that damn TV.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be bad.
And I don't want it. Oh, but let's get this over with. Get the Kansas City Chiefs here at 31. Another one of these teams who don't really need that much help elsewhere because, I mean, they're in the Super Bowl, so they could trade back to a team who wants to sneak back in here to the second round. I definitely like that more for the 32nd pick with the Niners because they definitely don't need help really anywhere. So I would like to see them trade back. But the Chiefs, they could use help at wide receiver. They really still don't have that marquee name. I know they drafted Sky Moore, and he's really not hitting how they wanted him to go. So I could see them going wide receiver here. Or Patrick Mahomes seemed to be playing a lot more loose and frantically this year and kind of having to create plays. So maybe they go offensive line. And who knows if Andy Reid even stays? Maybe he retires on the stage this year, and after their Super Bowl win, he's gone. Reid, how do you make sure to repeat another Super Bowl appearance next year for the Chiefs with a rookie?
I think you hit the nail right on the head there. Wide receiver is very shaky outside of Rashee Rice, who is the rookie who's been making pretty much any play that you need. Isaiah Pacheco has been great at running back and being a good receiving threat for them. O-line is shaky a bit. That's still strong. Juwan Taylor has been a decent addition at right tackle, but there's a lot of undiscipline there, right? So you might want to shore that up. Another sneaky spot is D-line too if they lose Chris Jones in free agency, which it seems very possible given their contract negotiations at the start of the season. So I'd go any one of those three, but I would move towards O-line here.
With the 31st pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Kansas City Chiefs select Kingsley Suamataia, tackle, BYU. The San Francisco 49ers are now on the clock.
I'm right there with you too. I think there's a big question mark with Chris Jones. I mean, you got Byron Murphy the second there, the defensive tackle out of Texas. I think if Chris Jones does walk, that pick makes more sense. And like I've stated time and time again, this wide receiver class is so deep. And I know the Chiefs don't have a second round. I think they have. Do they have a second round pick this year? I believe they do. I think they have the last pick this year. Yeah, I think that 63rd pick. So you can wait for a wide receiver there. But like you said, a lot of undisciplined play there at tackle. You have Nick Bosa coming out in his press conference asking what he sees out of the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. And his words were, they like to hold. So, but when I think discipline, I think BYU. Get him in here, 6'3", 280, mauling tackle. Excellent tools, athletic wise, but he's still just very raw. But I feel if you're able to get him in the building, invest, really trust the process with him, I think that would be a huge hit there in Kansas City. And we talked about Nick Bosa. Now we have the San Francisco 49ers here at 32. Like I said, I have more of an inkling feeling that they're going to trade this pick to a team who wants to sneak back into the first round to grab one of these quarterbacks while they're still on the board. Like I said, you got J.J. McCarthy still sitting here. You got Bo Nix, got Michael Penix Jr. I mean, you got Jordan Travis, even with him coming off of a broken leg. He's still sitting here. Sam Hartman, who felt like was playing in the NCAA for the last decade. And don't forget about Joe Milton out of Tennessee. He's still sitting here. Do you feel somebody would be more inclined to grabbing this pick at 32?
I would recommend it. I prefer that right there at 32 just because you still can get that fifth-year option. Get a quarterback. If you really want to take a swing and a reach at a quarterback, go ahead and just get the added bonus of the 5th-year option by sneaking back into there at 32. You're not going to have to give up too much of a pick.
And one team that I feel that has shown a track record of doing very crazy draft day trades, picks a couple picks later after the Niners at 32, and that's the Tennessee Titans at 38. There's big question marks with Will Levis. Who knows what they're going to do with Malik there in Tennessee? Could you see them trading up from 30 to 32 to get that player option at that point, that 5th-year option?
That wouldn't be a bad one. No, I could see Tennessee going that route. I mean, Will Levis was just, I mean, he looked like what we thought Will Levis would be.
Ooh, I actually got a better question for you. Your boys pick at 36. Would you rather trade up 4 more spots to grab one of these quarterbacks that are left on the board, or would you rather just wait? Because I mean, you got to look who's all picking ahead of you. You got the Niners, then you got the Panthers, who just drafted Bryce Young. They're not going to move on from him. The Patriots, they just picked a quarterback in the 1st round, and you got the Cardinals, who have Kyler, who they seem like they're bought into Kyler moving forward. Then you guys pick. Would you rather just wait and potentially just pick up a quarterback at 36, or would you rather trade back in the 1st round to get that 5th-year option?
Honestly, I would wait. And I if we're not taking quarterback in the high 1st round, I think that we're just fully in on Sam Howell for another season. I don't think you would see a quarterback pick from Washington until maybe the 4th round.
Right. Well, let's table this conversation for a quick second, because the commissioner's coming out for the final pick of the 1st round.
With the 32nd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback, Toledo. This now concludes the 1st round of the 2024 NFL Draft.
Yeah, I feel like this is just another chalk pick. I mean, they have talent all over the ball. If they don't trade, I feel like a big area of need is cornerback. And Quinyon Mitchell, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people. I mean, when you think Toledo, you don't really think football, but he's an elite athlete. I think right now he's flirting with that high 4.2, low 4.3 40 time, which is exactly what you would expect out of a cornerback in the National Football League. But I think playing at a smaller school like Toledo, nailing the fundamentals and having the trust in the Niners franchise, I think that would be a really great landing spot for a talent like Quinyon Mitchell.
I can see that. I can agree with that. And I think defensive back help is like the one area of need for San Francisco, if you want to say a need.
Right. But yeah, Reid, that concludes the 1st round. I tried warning you, but what's crazy to think too, with 2, I don't want to see amateurs at this point. I would like to say semi-pros at this point when it comes to sports media and the like and coverage. I feel like we did this a lot more smoothly than Mel Kiper and Todd McShay could do.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, we're only, an hour and 45 minutes in? Where are we at in the hour 45-minute mark in the NFL draft, the real one? We're probably at pick 5.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is like preseason for our inevitable live show again, like we did last year with Luis Martinez. And I think we were maybe 2/3 of the way through at this point. I was shirtless by this point. There was some.
You were. Yes, you were. But looking forward, I mean, like I said, the top 5 picks going into the 2nd round, you got the Panthers, Pats, Cardinals, Commanders, and Chargers. Some of the big names are still left on the board. Like we mentioned, J.J. McCarthy's still sitting there, Bo Nix, Byron Murphy, the defensive tackle out of Texas. I mean, you look at the running back room that's still there. Trey Benson out of Florida State, Jonathan Brooks, Bucky Irving. We got Blake Corum still sitting out there. If you're the Commanders, I'm going to ask you this. If you're the Commanders at pick 36 and 40, where are you? What positional group are you looking at now? Because you got your edge rusher. You got Dallas Turner.
It would have to be O-line. I think interior O-line too. Somewhere in the guard or center position. They desperately need a center.
Yep. And speaking about centers, I mean, you got one of the best centers in the draft still sitting there. I mean, he's definitely rated for the late 1st round, early 2nd round. And Jackson Powers Johnson, the center out of Oregon, especially with how well the Oregon offense was ran this past season in college football. I think that would be a really great get. You got Zach Frazier, the center out of West Virginia. Bring him over across state lines, get him into DC. And then even at guard, I know the Commanders love their guard. You got Cooper Beebe, the Kansas State offensive guard. I think is going to surprise a lot of people. But I think you're 1,000% correct. If you have two very high second round picks and your biggest need is the offensive line, you can plug two holes very fast.
100%.
But like you said, that is all contingent on if the Redskins, cancelable offense, if the Commanders do trade away that second overall pick down to 8 with the Atlanta Falcons. Like I said, this is Scott playing GM for every single team. Now, I'm very interested to see if any of these stay the same as we move forward, because we're definitely going to keep taking looks at this. I'll probably run another one after, say, the NFL Combine, leading up into draft week. And then, of course, like Reid said, last year we had the inaugural NFL Draft live stream, which was a hoot. So I would say if you did not catch that the day of, to go back on all the socials at 323 Reid on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube, because we recorded that. We live streamed and put it on YouTube, correct? For the people?
Yeah, it live streamed onto YouTube and Twitter, X, whatever. And then it came out as a podcast and came out to YouTube just straight up, but it's most fun live. Come watch it live. Be with us.
Absolutely. And definitely go out and check out at 323 College Shame Day on Instagram. That's probably where I'm going to be ending up posting these very early NFL mock draft results. I have plenty of shade being thrown at me already. Let me hear your opinions. Let me see where I missed, what you would do if you were me in these spots, or if I was just completely off base and I should just lose my media credentials at this point. But for now, it is Super Week here, and this is when one super episode reads. So thank you so much for joining me along the way.
Always. Thank you for having me. It's been always fun. This is a great addition for Super Week. Handles a lot of work for me.
Oh, you're welcome. And as always, folks, we'll talk with you next time. And remember to have a very shameful day.